Hi, this is Mashnu, and it's day 2 of the middle game training. This time I've chosen for this position that was played in 1954 during the championships of the Soviet Union between Alexander Tolush with white pieces playing against Vladimir Alatortsev with black, and it's white to move here, and I'm going to show you the first move of white because we are going to look at this position from black's point of view. So the move here that was done by white is rook to g5. The threat is not very difficult to spot. It's rook takes h5. That's white's threat to take on h5. If we retake with the pawn, then queen g7 is checkmate because the g file will be opened. So the question here is how to react to this with black. If you want to think for yourself first, pause the video now and take a minute or 5 to have a good look at the position and see if you can find how to react to this attack of white. I'll continue my explanation in a few seconds. Okay, so in this position white is clearly attacking, and white believes very much on the power of his attack. Now, before we start looking at variations, let's have a look at the position first, because we see, of course, this threat of rook takes h5, as I said before, but we see here that white has two pieces that are very passive right now. Remember in the previous video that I told you that a very important thing when you attack is to involve all the pieces in the attack. In this case, white is breaking the rule. White is not involving these two light pieces into his attack, so in fact he is using only part of the power that he has to attack. Now if we look at the black pieces, well, it seems like black has started a kind of attack here on this side, but the knight is defending this a3 square. The last move of white, rook to g5, also blocks the return of the white queen, to d2 or e3, and we see here an open diagonal that can be used by black. Also, something that must be said is that this open f file is very important. So the question is now for black, can we try to defend in an active way, or do we need to defend in a passive way? Now if you have this choice whether to defend actively or defend passively, always choose for the active defense. So the defense that also involves a counter threat. Let's say a passive way of defending would be, for example, rook to g8, which is a possible defense, because if now rook takes h5, g takes h5, there is no mate on g7, so perhaps rook takes g8 can be played, and after king takes, then there is just a few checks for white, but not much more. So this would be perhaps a sufficient defense. But let's have a look at what happened in the game, because in the game the black player chose for a very active defense, based on the fact the queen of white cannot return to defend this king position. The pawns of white are quite advanced, so this king can become vulnerable. Black played queen to b6, making use of this diagonal that is opened here. Now rook takes h5 doesn't work, because then queen takes g1. White replied here rook to e1. So now suddenly white realizes that it must defend the e3 square, because if white doesn't do that, then the queen, let me go back one move, the queen can go to e3 and then later followed by rook to f2, and we have this second rank threat. Queen check here, and then after king c1, queen takes c2 checkmate. So those things can become dangerous. Now rook to e1 played, and black still played rook to f2. So right now black is controlling the second rank, and as you saw also in the previous video, in that case it was the seventh rank. It's the same idea. If you control your opponent's second rank and penetrate in his position, it can be very, very dangerous. Here white continued with king to c1, trying to look for some shelter for his king. Now knight to f4 followed, and we suddenly see that this whole attack of white has vanished. There is no way for white to attack here on the king side. Now the knight is even defending g6 and h5, and the f4 square is an outpost for the knight. Besides that, it can also play an active role in the attack if we go this way. Here white played rook to g3, admitting once more his mistake of this first rook move, rook to g5. So he goes back to g3, but it's already too late. Black has now a killing combination, and perhaps you would like to think for yourself. Pause the video if you like and look for a direct win for black. Okay, I'll continue the explanation now. The first move perhaps is not difficult to find. Well, there are two very strong moves here. One is queen to d4 to threaten to use the queen also in the attack. The other one is immediately rook takes c2, and that's what happened in the game. Rook takes c2 check. The king took on c2, and now black enters white's position with queen to f2 check. White places the knight in between, but now the rook is hanging on g3, so queen takes g3 is winning already a full piece, and the king of white is still defenseless. Now take a look at this white queen on h6. This is a terrible piece at the moment. It's completely cut off the important parts of the board. It's doing nothing there. Queen g5 was played, so offering trade of queens. Perhaps the last hope for white is that black would trade here the queens, but still then black is completely winning, because the endgame is winning as a piece, is a piece up. In the game black didn't trade, but he continued his attack with queen to d3 check, king to c1, and now he took on a3, and here it was enough, and white resigned. It will be soon be checkmated with this pieces, the queen, the rook and the knight working together over there. Let's have a short look again at the whole example. Let me see where we started. It was right there, rook to g5. So this rook to g5 move was a mistake. White overestimated his own attacking chances and underestimated the counter chances of black. Now, what would have been an alternative? Well, we saw already in the game that the white queen was completely out of play. So a good move would have been here to bring the queen to e3. Now, still then white has a bad position. Black can still bring his knight to f4 and bring this rook to f8 to control the f-file. So the position is still better for black, but at least white would have solved the biggest problem, that is the weakness of this diagonal right there. So in the game, instead of queen to e3, rook to g5, the mistake, and queen to b6 is a very strong one. By the way, of course, the queen could also go to a7 with the same idea of controlling this diagonal here. So rook to e1, trying to defend the square e3, second rank attack, king goes to c1. Let's have a short look here if there is any attacking chances. By sacrificing again here, then we can take here. What happens? Queen takes b6. Wait a minute. Whoa! So here it can take on h5. We have a check. We have a check first, and after king goes to c1, then we can take the rook, and then it's all safe. Notice that the white queen doesn't have any check here because all these squares are taken care of by the black pieces. So in this case also this second option of sacrificing this rook would not work. If white defends now, queen to e3, it's interesting. Well, if we look at the material now, black is the exchange upright. So perhaps it's a good idea here to involve all our pieces in the attack. For example, by playing bishop to g4, activating the bishop, or rook to g8. Let's have a look at bishop to g4. Bishop to g4. It's not easy for white here. What could he try? If the knight moves, here it's taken. Knight to c3. Is there an option? Knight to c3, then a3 falls. Let's see, knight to c3, then rook takes a3, and the knight goes off the board. Bishop cannot move anywhere, so white is completely cramped here. Queen c3. We could even trade and go to a one endgame, and then we'll take and then take on a3 perhaps, or continue the attack with rook to f8. Perhaps even more powerful. Well, as you see, black is dominating the position in anyway. It's white that is forced to defense in very difficult ways. So here rook to f8 brings even more pressure to the black position. And remember, if white trades at certain point these queens, black is the exchange up, and these two pawns will not become dangerous because of the influence of black on this second rank still. Let's see, if it tries to advance with the pawns here, we also have d3, but also we have rook to f1 trading the rooks, or rook to h2 to double up the rooks on the second rank. It's all winning for black. Well, let's finish the video by having a look at what happened after rook f2, king to c1 was played. The knight was activated via f4, rook goes back, but it's too late. Now this beautiful sacrifice well, it's not really a sacrifice because we win. It's a small combination. That's how we call this, a small combination, a little combination. Knight to d2 and queen takes g3, and now black doesn't want to trade queens. It would have been enough to enter one game, but he decided to finish it attacking by these two moves. So well, I hope you found this interesting. I find this a very interesting position, especially because of the question how to defend in an active way or in a passive way. And if we look at this starting position, by the way, from white's point of view, I'll turn the board around. We could also approach this with a question: what should we do here with white? Should we try to continue the attack with queen to g5, threatening to take on h5, or we could say, is it wise now to prevent the counterplay of black by moving the queen to e3 and defending these weak squares, these weak dark squares? So every position we can look for from both sides and think about the possible strategies. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you next time, and there will be tomorrow with video number 3. Goodbye, thank you.